Welcome to the Webster World Report, a program linking Webster University's global system while the world is in crisis. Here's our host, Rick Rockwell.
Thanks for joining us. We're back from a very long academic break with our first program of the new year. Thanks for your patience in awaiting our return. This is the January 29th, 2021 edition of the Webster World Report. This time, a look at the new year with the university's top leader, a conversation with Chancellor Beth Stroble, and one of Webster's students in Europe reflects on their experience in a global university system. But first, let's hear from newscaster Tiara Gray.
The U.S. Senate confirmed Webster alumnus and former General Lloyd Austin as the newest Secretary of Defense. Austin pledged that his top priority would be having the Pentagon join others to fight the coronavirus pandemic.
And if confirmed, I will quickly review the department's contributions to coronavirus relief efforts, ensuring that we're doing everything that we can to help distribute vaccines across the country and to vaccinate our troops and preserve readiness.
Austin earned a master's degree in management and leadership from Webster University, and he has won several alumni awards from Webster. Austin becomes the first African American to hold the cabinet position of Secretary of Defense. Austin is not the only Webster graduate with ties to the Biden administration. Jesse Lauder is the new Deputy Assistant Secretary of Labor for Public Affairs. Also, Delmira Price Caesar served as the Director of Human Resources for Biden's presidential campaign and will likely also find a place in the new administration. As the pandemic rages on, students return to spring semester classes at Webster in January, although most classes will be held online or in hybrid settings. Some in-person classes are underway at the main campus in Webster Groves. Webster's operations in Uzbekistan and Ghana are also holding a mix of in-person, hybrid, and online classes. All other locations are on remote operations at this time as the global health picture varies. Webster's worldwide community has experienced 173 cases of COVID-19 among students, staff, and faculty since the pandemic began last year. The university's Chief Diversity Officer and Dean of Students issued a letter together in January officially condemning the riot at the U.S. Capitol. The letter from Vincent C. Fluellen and John Buck denounced the anti-democratic violence of that day, January 6th. The letter also condemned the blatant racism and anti-Semitism on display during the riot. The letter pledged the university community would work to bolster democracy and fight racism. The Webster Speaks webinar series on race and equity issues closed out 2020 with a 2-hour special featuring 9 panelists. One of the panelists, Valerie Patton, co-leader of Greater St. Louis Incorporated, spoke about the Black Lives Matter movement.
And I know that there have been a lot of conversations about, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, This Life Matters. But those groups have not been oppressed or been dealing with systematic racism all their lives. So Black Lives Matter.
The Webster Speaks series will resume again in March. In February, the university will hold its annual 3-day Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference, which is free and open to the public virtually. The conference will feature Black Lives Matter founder Patrisse Cullors and transgender activist Charlotte Clymer. Registration for the conference can be found on the university's website. The International Relations Department at Webster's Ghana campus hosted a masterclass panel about African responses to the economic impact of COVID-19. The panel included Webster's Dr. Michael Williams, a professor at the Ghana campus who encouraged Africa to find its solutions to the pandemic and other problems.
Again, Africa has a fairly good record. We solved the problems in Liberia, we solved the problems in Sierra Leone, But when you allow for the UN and their delays, as was the case in Rwanda, or you allow the US and NATO to come and destroy things as they did in Libya, we'll have a problem.
The entire panel discussion and other virtual program lectures can be found on the Facebook page of Webster's Ghana campus. Webster's chess team returned to championship form in January. Capturing the Pan Am Intercollegiate Chess Championship, the top 4 teams from the Pan Am competition move on to compete for the President's Cup, the national championship for college chess teams in the U.S. Webster's chess team has now finished first in the Pan Am Championship in 8 of the past 9 years. The team is coached by Grandmaster Susan Polgar. The chair of Webster's Board of Trustees and his wife have made a major donation to the university. The gift pays for the renovation and expansion of the university's Academic Resource Center. Rob and Cindy Reig donated $300,000 to upgrade the center, which will now be called the Reig Academic Resource Center. The center provides tutoring resources for students in Webster Groves and resources for Webster's entire global network. Rob Reig is the former president of MasterCard Operations and Technology, and Cindy Reig is a children's book author. For the Webster World Report, I'm Tiara Gray.
Thanks, Tiara. We'll be hearing more from Tiara later on the program. It's a new year. There's a new U.S. president in the White House, but one constant is the leadership of Chancellor Beth Stroble at Webster University. She's held the top leadership post at the university since 2009. She talked to us about goals for the year ahead, including one of her favorite international projects meant to raise awareness about violence aimed at women. She joined us via Zoom from Webster Groves, Missouri.
I'm a faithful listener, and it's wonderful to join you as a speaker today. I will say that I think it's important to focus on in 2021, what do we carry forward with us in 2021? We should not turn our backs on what we learned in 2020. And I think part of what we learned is that when we pull together as a community, whether we're talking about Webster University community or our broader community, we all thrive and do better. And life does not have to be some people lose and some people win at the expense of others. And we see that in the health crisis. We see that in the reckoning with racial injustice. And we see it in the economic disruption. So I would say that what gives me hope in 2021 is that we can take the resilience and the commitment to community that surfaced when we were at our best in 2020 and let that carry us forward into a better year.
One might argue that in the past decade, throughout your administration at Webster, that the theme has been to bring Webster more strongly into the community, not just the community in St. Louis, but the international community. And so could you talk a little bit maybe about initiatives that are important to you and important to the university in that continued community building that has been so much a part of your administration?
Well, thank you for asking that, Rick. When I first arrived at Webster in 2009, I had quite a learning curve, as I think most people new to Webster do. And because I came as the president, I wanted to become as familiar as I could with the challenges and the opportunities for Webster. One of the challenges I saw was that we tended to think of our university community as St. Louis being sort of at the hub of the wheel and just lots of spokes going out to the campuses that were not St. Louis. And I saw that as a challenge, partly because I know that the heart of Webster and the brain power of Webster is distributed across all of those places. It doesn't reside just in St. Louis. And I also was beginning to understand human rights issues, educational challenges, world issues on a global scale, and not only from the US perspective. And I saw a wonderful opportunity for Webster University as we educate students and as we try to have a positive impact on our local society to do that location by location. And to think about the additive power and the synergies that could be created if we functioned much more like a network and a system rather than quote unquote headquarters and satellite offices. That's a culture change and a mindset change. And we've made progress in some ways, and in other ways, that's still a work in progress. What I have found that has great leverage and capacity to help us engage in that global mindset is to focus ourselves on very global issues that affect people everywhere that they live. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals capture that. They are goals that establish what many countries in dialogue with one another thought were the best goals to set to achieve by 2030 that would assure fundamental human rights like right to health, right to clean water, right to not live in poverty, and the sustainable development goal that I'll focus on today, ending violence and discrimination against girls and women in all the forms that it takes.
You are very right. Webster is a distributed network, and getting that network behind some of these initiatives is important. That certainly is the catalytic leadership that you provide. You have worked for years with the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network. I think you've just alluded to your work with them here. So could you tell us a little bit more about the important work they're doing that you're part of and that you are trying to help others become part of here as we go into February and they have some major events?
We first became attached to the African Renaissance and Diaspora Network, and I'll call it ARDN for short, probably 2011, when their focus then was on the Sustainable Development Goal about ending death and infection from HIV and AIDS. The lasting impact for Webster from that engagement is a celebration of World AIDS Day and much more activity around helping people know their status, because without knowing your status, your access to appropriate medical treatment will be challenged or maybe not present at all. Now that they have begun to focus on a different sustainable development goal, number 5, our engagement has increased exponentially. ARDN is an NGO. It has 501c3 status in the United States as a tax-exempt organization, and it has consultative status with the United Nations. Its charge is to build strength across the African diaspora, African nations, and people of African descent, wherever they live in the world, particularly among youth, to popularize the Sustainable Development Goals. It's easy to understand then why Webster was recruited by Dr. Jibril Diallo to be a partner to the ARDN effort, because our partnership represents an opportunity not only here in St. Louis, but truly at every one of our campuses and the communities that we call home, to engage youth in understanding the importance of binding together to establish fundamental human rights.
So tell us about this initiative and more about what ARDN is trying to do coming up in February, please.
This is a good example of where last year taught us some things that we should not shy away from, and that's the power of doing things virtually. Think about this podcast. This podcast had more viability and more demand as a result of our not being able to be physically present with one another. And ARDN too has found that same energy as a result of our isolation. In the past, they would gather at least once, sometimes twice a year at the United Nations for informative forums and calls to action. This year, that truly was not possible, so they began to create a virtual forum series. The first happened in September with speakers, intergenerational, mostly women, not all members of the African diaspora, but many, talking about what are the fundamental ways that discrimination and racism affect women, and what are the kinds of efforts that can offset that and eradicate it. So it set the table for disseminating information and bringing global intergenerational voices together in a very, afternoon where we could learn from each other and commit anew to ending violence and discrimination against girls and women. The second forum will happen on February 11th, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And this time, the focus is on economic equity. And I'm very pleased that one of the special guests for this forum is someone that Webster knows well, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Olympian and founder of the Jackie Joyner-Kersee Youth Center Foundation. And she certainly understands what it looks like to be a woman in sport and a woman who now is using her influence and her organization to actually help other girls and young women thrive.
We will certainly provide information for folks in the podcast about how they can register for this event. Anything else you would like to tell us about the event?
That it is free and open to the public, and we are organizing around the world of Webster watch parties so that we build audience for the forum. And then I think we should talk about the red card. The red card is ARDN's symbolic way of helping each one of us make a tangible commitment that we, in our own lives and our own organizations, will end violence and discrimination against girls and women. In the game of soccer, football, whichever term you use for that sport, giving a red card signifies that the player has violated the most fundamental rules of the game and should be removed. And so signing the red card pledge, which is available at the ARDN website, signing your name to it is your own personal way of taking a stand against violence and discrimination against girls and women. ARDN has a goal of, by the 2022 FIFA in Qatar, to have achieved 1 million signatures.
As we conclude our time together, I wonder if you have any message for the Webster International System or just for our international listeners in general.
My hope for the future is that every individual at Webster finds a way to connect with issues of global significance. If this is the way, then we welcome you. If this is not quite the way, then we ask you to create your own way or look for other initiatives where each one of us can feel that Webster is engaged with the topics of most importance for not only our future, but the world's.
Thank you so much. Our guest today on the Webster World Report, Chancellor Beth Stroble of Webster University, joining us via Zoom from Webster Groves. Thank you so much, Dr. Stroble.
Thank you, Rick.
To register to be part of the ARDN Virtual Global Summit on February the 11th and to learn more about the Red Card Project, go to www.ardn.ngo. That's www.ardn.ngo. We'll be back with International Student Views, more from the Webster World Report in a moment.
When you visit Webster Athens, one word comes to mind: value. Study in Athens, Greece, and get an unparalleled educational experience through various innovative undergraduate, graduate, and study abroad programs. The campus at Webster Athens lies right below the Acropolis at the confluence of Europe, Asia, and Africa. To join our learning community, email athensadmissions@webster.edu or visit www.webster.edu.gr.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello from Webster University in Tashkent. Our campus is the first and premier American university in Uzbekistan. In this dynamic higher education market, we are constantly on the lookout for new faculty and staff. If you are ready to embark on an adventure in a safe, affordable, modern country with a rich history and exciting future, reach out with an email. Contact us at this email address, uzcareers@webster.edu. We look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back to the Webster World Report. Tiara Gray joins us again with an interview about the Webster experience for international students. Tiara spoke with Polina Flenova, a student from Russia who's currently taking classes at Webster's campus in Geneva. They spoke via phone from Geneva, Switzerland. Here are excerpts from their conversation, along with a special greeting from Tiara.
Bonjour, bienvenue et merci de vous rejoindre. Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Hi, Tiara. Thanks for having me.
You have traveled all over the world, and studying abroad must be an eye-opening experience. Webster University is a worldwide institution, and the mission is to ensure high-quality learning experiences that transform students for global citizenship and individual excellence. And that's the mission of Webster. Tell us, how have you been transformed for global citizenship and individual excellence by studying in Geneva?
I have traveled a lot indeed, as you mentioned. In fact, I finished high school in Canada, and then I moved to Europe because I saw more opportunities over there because everything is closer in a sense. Canada is in its own continent, per se. Studying abroad was and still is a great experience because it opened a lot of doors and opportunities in terms of career. Great start for a career if someone wants to go into human rights or social work or even psychology, which is what I'm interested in. Lots of internships, lots of job opportunities, lots of opportunities to connect to different cultures, languages, and people. Webster Geneva is a very multicultural place. There are a lot of people from all over the world, including America, Canada, Europe, and Asia, which makes it even a better place to connect and learn, especially at this age where we're getting the most information in to produce the greatest results. So I would definitely say that studying in Geneva has changed me for better. I've grown personally as a human being, and I've grown emotionally, and I've grown mentally, become a professional later on in my career.
As a study abroad student, you're very well traveled and you met people from all over the world. What are your perspectives on social justice and equality? Do you have any personal stories to share?
Since I've studied in very well educated and first world countries such as Canada and Switzerland, social justice and equality are two of the biggest topics that are presented and represented by the two countries and cultures. That's same both in Canada and in Switzerland. Equality is the biggest. Canada and in Switzerland are the two countries that represent equality the best, I would say, because of the multicultural dynamic that are presented in schools and just in the society. So I never felt discriminated as a woman or as a person of a different culture or background. It was always well addressed, this topic. And I was happy to see that people talk about these things because the culture that I come from, Russian culture, those topics are not well talked about. And because of that, certain problems arise. So I was very happy that I was able to dive into this great dynamic early on when I was 15 and get a lot of insight so that when I come back to Russia once in a while, I'm able to share my knowledge and experience with people over here.
So would you say that Canada and Geneva, you said they have a mixed culture. Is it kind of like a melting pot of a lot of different cultures? That's kind of what it sounds like.
You know what? I wouldn't call it a melting pot. It's more of a mosaic because they're not trying to make you all the same. They're preserving your identity, but asking you to respect others like they respect you, and your values and your background and your beliefs.
And what has been one of your favorite memories studying abroad?
Well, there are a lot of
I'm sure you have many.
Yeah, definitely. All of my memories are only good memories. Probably, I would say, having worked at this wonderful place in Geneva, which is called AUNUC Foundation, which basically works with various organizations such as hospitals and refugee centers and repaints the walls from plain white or other weird colors into something nice and cheerful. And that stimulates people to have a positive attitude to life and sometimes recover if we're talking about hospitals. So that was a great experience that I've had in Geneva.
And do you have any other thoughts or insights or perspectives about your experiences you would like to share with the Webster community?
I think it's important that we still realize that we're the same community in a sense. And it's great that you guys are trying to reconnect us or just connect and make a new connection, which is great. See, that's how I got to know you, which is a good start.
Well, thank you so much, Polina, for joining. Much success to you on your studies.
Thank you.
Tiara Gray conducted that interview with Polina Flenova, a Webster student studying at Webster's Geneva campus. The interview was recorded via phone line between Switzerland and Webster Groves. Thanks for listening to our program. The Webster World Report will return with a new edition on February the 19th. We'd like to add your voices to our podcast. If you're a student, a staff member, or a member of the faculty, reach out to us. Send us a short audio clip from your cell phone or contact us via email to volunteer to be interviewed on the program. You can find us at covid19@webster.edu. You can also send questions or comments to that email address about our world in crisis. That address again is covid19@webster.edu. Also check out the university's COVID-19 resource pages at webster.edu/COVID-19. The Webster World Report is available on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and of course, SoundCloud. You can also hear the program on your smart speaker or wherever you find your podcasts. Also, our program is featured on KWRH-FM Radio 63119, that's 92.9 FM in Webster Groves, Missouri. Thanks for joining us this week. The Webster World Report is produced by students, staff, and faculty at Webster University. For announcer Jennifer Starkey, news reporter Tiara Gray, and associate producer Jennifer Gamich, I'm Rick Rockwell. Stay healthy and safe.
The Webster World Report is produced by the Global Marketing and Communications Division of Webster University and through the facilities and copyright support of Webster School of Communications. This program is copyright 2021.